And as usual, I always start with just a short introduction to the Community Engagement Forum. We're a community of practice on engaging displaced population in humanitarian response. We're part of the global CCTM cluster, and our purpose is to share resources and experiences and challenges and solutions among practitioners and people with displaced background. And so in addition to doing this on our website and on our LinkedIn page and other platforms, we also use these monthly community coffee and chat sessions to discuss different community engagement topics. And I very often receive questions about the CCT, the Community Coordination Toolbox, which I was part of developing for the NRC. So I thought I would dedicate a session during the coffee and chat to introducing and explaining a little bit about how to use the CCT for engaging displaced populations. And to do that, I want to start with sharing my screen. Just want to do this correctly now. Include sound. I'm going to share a video with you. Not this. Okay. Please shout out if you cannot see or hear this video.
Welcome to the NRC Community Coordination Toolbox, a practical guidance for facilitating the engagement of refugees, IDPs, and affected communities in the decisions that affect their lives, focusing especially on displaced women and marginalised groups. Hi, I'm Miriam, and I've been working with affected communities for the past 30 years. We all know that community participation is key in humanitarian response. The core humanitarian standard on quality and accountability places communities and people affected by crisis at the centre of humanitarian action. Participation of diverse groups from the affected population in making decisions about humanitarian assistance will make sure the different needs of the various groups are met. But often we still struggle to design our programme with the affected community. We struggle to engage with community members that can represent diverse needs and priorities. It is not only about sharing information, interacting, consulting and engaging with individuals and groups from the community, but also trying to do our best to ensure that those people are really representative and accountable to different components of the community, and that we really listen to what they say. In my work, I have found in the NRC Community Coordination Toolbox very useful, practical guidance for different modalities and activities to engage with communities in different phases of the response. The Toolbox is a consolidation of tools developed by NRC practitioners over the years, in camps, informal sites and urban neighbourhoods. It is the result of efforts of NRC teams and the displaced community members in Afghanistan, Iraq, Kenya, Lebanon, Palestine, Greece and Nigeria. Today, all this know-how can be found in one place, the Community Coordination Toolbox, a web-based resource developed by the Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, with the funding from the International Organization for Migration. The Community Coordination Toolbox was designed to support practitioners in their work toward a more people-centered approach, to increase accountability to affected populations, to improve our communication with communities, to promote participation from the design to the evaluation of humanitarian response, to actively engage women and marginalised groups. The Toolbox has over 50 tools that aim to help you reach the displaced community members that are often excluded from participating in social life, as well as humanitarian decision-making, and women and the minority groups specifically. It helps you identify them and help humanitarian practitioners increase their accountability to affected populations. To access the tools, all you have to do is visit the Toolbox website, choose your preferred language.
Okay. I will stop sharing.
English, French, Arabic, and search.
No. I didn't hear anything from anyone, so I presume you could successfully see the video. Is that, can I get a thumbs up? Or, yes. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
It was loud and
Thank you,
clear.
Tom. Great. And I stopped it there because, I mean, this, we developed it we started developing it in 2020, this online toolbox. And as Miriam was saying in the video, we started with almost 50 tools, but now we have over 100 tools in the toolbox. And I know that that's a lot to navigate and to even kind of get your head around as a first-time user or a regular user. So I want to share my screen again, and I'll show you the website. Here, as Miriam was saying, the first time you go to cct.nrc.no, you get to choose your language, English, French, or Arabic. But if you want to change that language later on, you can also go up to the globe here and change at any time. And all the tools exist in these 3 languages. And then when it comes to the content, one of the questions that I think I get most often about the CCT is where do I start? I want to increase participation in my project, my program, our activities. Where do I start? Like, what tool do I start with, Kristen? And then what I always tell them is I show them the CCT roadmap to start with. And you can find that all the kind of guidance about how to use the toolbox you can find here in About the Toolbox, and then how to use the CCT. The roadmap is this, you can see it in the background as well, this kind of circular step-by-step tool. You scroll down, and as you can see, there are many tools here, but the CCT roadmap is what you're looking for. If you click on it and you have good internet and not a lot else going on, it'll show up for you. But I will show you actually. I have it already open. I'm prepared for you guys. So this is what you'll find. And when people ask me that question, where do I start? I say the first thing that you need to do when you want to increase participation in your activities is you need to assess current participation levels and activities, who participate, who does not participate, what organizations are already doing something when it comes to participation, and what are the communities already doing among themselves. So that's step number 1. Analyze community dynamics and assess existing community participation structure levels. We want to support what is already happening. We want to hear from the displaced communities how we can support them. We don't want to duplicate anything. We don't want to disturb or disrupt anything that is already working. And to do that, there's some guiding questions for each of the steps. So if you're using the first step as an example, you can see the questions on the left here under the step 1 assessment. Do the team members have the skills to understand and use the CCT tools, or do you need to plan for specific training sessions? Are there stakeholders, including inclusive community representatives? Say camp committees or representation structures, focal points, already with this information about leadership structures in the area that you can talk to. You don't have to go through a full participation assessment. Are there any groups that could be put at risk or further risk by openly engaging them? What do the different community groups see as valuable participation? It might not be the same as what we see as valuable participation, including how and when to participate. And are there different participation goals, plans, and modalities that are necessary or most relevant for the different subgroups, so the different demographic groups among the community groups? So they might sound like difficult questions, but fear not, because with this roadmap, there's another tool that is the roadmap tools guide. So I will open that now. Just need to. Sorry, it's behind the the stop sharing thing. So if I stop sharing, then and how do I do this? I will stop sharing and then I will share again just to make sure that you can see it. So we're going to continue using this first step as an example. And oh man, no. Sorry about this. How do I get to? This is the the CCT roadmap tools guide. So if you click on it, sorry, does anyone know how I can move behind you're sharing your screen to get to my tab? This can be a collaborative exercise, guys.
If you can share an individual screen, if you unshare your screen and reshare it, instead of showing the screen, you can share just the window. Okay. And then that window will keep on being shared, even if you're looking at something else. Wonderful. Magic. Magic indeed. Window. Mm-hmm. I think it's working. Perfect. So this is also, you can find this on the list there under that tab, how to use the CCT. So this is the tools guide to go with the roadmap. So it's categorized, under each of the steps, the 6 steps that you saw. So we've excuse me, continue with the assessment step. You see here the most relevant tools. So you're asking yourself these questions. Do I need to train my team in how to use the CCT? If you do, there's the field staff training tools. There's a little explanation about what they are, and there's a hyperlink to them. I don't know if this hyperlink will work now that I'm just sharing a window and not a screen, but it will take you to the field staff training tools in the CCT. And similarly then, to understand who participates and how they participate and who would like to participate more, etc. There's a survey you can use called the Community Participation Survey. You can use this as a baseline and then come back to it again later on, in the middle of your project, at the end of your project, to see if you're actually succeeding in increasing participation for the groups that wanted to participate more and differently. This is social and cultural influence analysis tools. These tools will help you identify the informal leaders among the displaced population. So not necessarily just the leaders that you will need to work with, but also the influential people, within each demographic group that people trust, and both trust receiving information from and also sharing information with, as an interlocutor between us and them. There's the participatory community feedback template, which helps you understand the current satisfaction levels with the response or a specific activity or project, and also what
can look like project success or project impact for the displaced. It helps them identify impact indicators, and then they can hold you to account and keep monitoring how you're doing according to their impact indicators. The stakeholder mapping and analysis tool assesses who works in the area, in the camp, in the area, in the neighborhood, and what influence do they have over the response, and how should you work with them. There's also the participatory community assessment tool, which is relevant in an ABA, an area-based approach. It's a little bit more extensive than just the survey. It helps you identify, for example, survey respondents, and gives you a little bit more guidance on where to start before the survey and how to use it. So this is just an example of how you can find more information on which tools are relevant for the specific stage that you are in your participation needs in your context. So we obviously would try to develop this guidance, the roadmap and the tools guidance, to make it easier for people to use the CCT. But still, there's over 100 tools, like I was saying, in the toolbox. And if I stop sharing and go back to the actual website, I will show you. Just briefly. So if we go to home, excuse me, how it's organized, all these tools, all these over 100 tools. So there's the field staff training tools that I was referring to earlier that could be part of your first step to train the team. If you click on the main tab, you will get an overview of what is in this chapter, as I like to call them, how to use them. And here you'll see all the kind of the training modules that exist. There's PowerPoints for most of them, and also a session plan. And these are, PowerPoints or Word or Excel documents. And this is intentional so that they can easily be downloaded and edited. So contextualized for you and your needs. There's no copyright. Please download everything and use it as you wish. Change as much as you want. So that's for the main overview of a chapter. But if you want a little bit more information about a specific training module, for example, you can click on that from here, and then you'll get a little bit basic information about each of the tools in here. So the tools are explained, so you don't have to actually open the tools and read through them to understand what they are for. And it's the same for each of the tabs. So for example, for community governance structure, you click on the main tab, it'll explain this is to understand why it's important to work with community structures, how to use the tools, who should use them, and what's in the chapter or the tab. And then if you want to understand a bit more about, for example, the learning needs assessment tools, it's best to click on them from the main tab, because then you get this information about the description of the tool. And again, going back to how to use the CCT tab, I just want to show you, I suppose, a little hack.
If you scroll down, there's a few very useful tools here. So there is there's the roadmap and the roadmap tools, like I was saying, but there's also guidance for using the CCT. And there's one called outline and overview, where you can find a detailed description first of all the chapters, and then further down in the document, in the Word document, a detailed description of each tool in each of the chapters. So it's like an index, I suppose. So that's the kind of navigation part of it. But then there's, of course, questions around, okay, but how do I find the right tool for my context among all of these? I know what is where now, but how do I know what's useful for me? And for that question, I think I will hand over to Raphael, who works for NRC Site Management in Nigeria. And Raphael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, colleagues.
So if you could maybe just explain a little bit around why you chose the tools that you will talk to us about and how you contextualize them. That could be a great example. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, for us here in Nigeria, just to give an overview before I go forward, we operate through approach, which is the mobile site management as well as the UDOC out of camp. So for mobile site management, already these are people that are in a camp. So already they are confined in a place. So we have the women leadership as well as the male leadership. However, for the out of camp, because the structure there is already an existing structure that has been placed by the government. They are particularly under the traditional leadership of the state. So this is for Nigerian context, where already you have an established leadership within the community. So for us, we target the IDPs in host community just to ensure that they receive the services required and are linked to the necessary service providers. So for us, the community coordination toolbox has been very, very essential because we have utilized it in contextualizing a lot of the activities, which include even the setting up of the UDOC response as well as the establishment of the community center. However, I will want to talk specifically on one of the tools which has made a lot of impact, particularly for our program here in Nigeria, which is the Women Coordination Network. So looking at the context where in the out of camp where the leadership are already established, most of these leaders are all male, which means that in terms of decision making, this leadership make decision on behalf of the wider population, and which means that women are not carried along and are not able to make a decision because they are not part of the leadership. We have established a different neighborhood committee, but looking at the approach, which we want it to be very inclusive, we wanted the women to also participate because the tool, objective of the tool is for women to be part of decisions that happen within their wider community, and for them also to understand and then be carried along in the operation, and also to improve women's ability to also take care of their family and some other needs. So what we did was to look at the context, look at the participation that women has been doing within the different community through the neighborhood committee. So we come up with an idea to have the Women Coordination Network, where we selected leadership of each committee across the 12 settlements we're implementing in the out of camp to form the Women Coordination Network. So with that, we do not just isolate the Women Coordination Network. However, we came up with an idea to link the network with the stakeholders engagement we have, as well as link it further with the coordination platform where we have partners and service providers. So with that, at the Women Coordination Network, we have to discuss issues that regard to women and then that have the needs about women. And then we assign a female staff to actually facilitate the process for women to be very open, to come up with ideas that concerns them and how this can be addressed. So from this meeting platform from the Women Coordination Network, this is taken up to the stakeholders where we have the leadership that is already structured. And then this is presented as an action and then for solution. Because sometimes the issues that come up from women are related to the leadership from the stakeholders. This is also taken from that level and then moved to the coordination meeting where we have the partners and representatives from the women as well as the stakeholders. So this issue, most of the challenges are being addressed at that level, and then these have also helped to strengthen referral in terms of specific need for women. And this has not only improved women participation, but also improved their response in terms of decision making and in terms of influencing our programming, which contributed to why we made a lot of progress in terms of the community-led project that we implemented for the CAP meeting as well as the SPACE. Women were so interested to participate because already they have a platform that speaks out for them. So currently at the Art of Camp, we have a leadership of women that contribute in decision-making, that influence our programming, and then that collectively work with the stakeholder. However, one of the milestones, I would say, that made it possible for us to set up this particular Women Coordination Network was the level of acceptance we have with the engagement we have done with the stakeholders, which is already a structural leadership. So that transparency in terms of our programming, in terms of making them aware, involving them, and giving them this sense of ownership has made them understood that the Women Coordination Network is an avenue to help women voice out their needs specifically that cannot be voiced out through the stakeholders or through the leadership. So this has actually contributed to a lot of achievement, and I'm very glad to actually express this to colleagues here, that the women coordination tools as well as a lot of tools on the CCT has been very useful and has contributed a lot to all the milestones we have achieved in our site management response in NRC Nigeria. Thank you, and over. I don't know if there are comments or clarification with this, but for now, I think I will hold on. Thank you, and over.
Thanks very much, Raphael. Do anyone have any question for Raphael about how he used the tools or selected them, or about the example? Excuse me. I have a question, Raphael.
Okay,
how did you, because in the toolbox there's one of the tabs or chapters, as I like to call them, on women's coordination networks, and then there's the list of tools in there. Did you use all of the tools in that under that tab, or did you choose just some of them, or how did you do it?
Thank you so much for that question. For us, of course, you cannot utilize all the tools, but majorly we utilize the tools. One of the tools that talks about the guidance on how you go about establishing the Women Coordination Network. And we also did the introduction and the launching of workshop because, yes, it's a pilot phase. We need to have a sit down with the women to give them the clear overview of what the Women Coordination Network is all about, and then to clearly state their roles and responsibility. These tools, and also, of course, in terms of service mapping, we already have established partners mapping across the urban displacement site, whereby the women also tap into that already existing partners mapping, which means that we do not go on to have another service mapping as part of the tool. And in terms of monitoring the progress, we did not utilize the complete monitoring tool, but what we did was to have an evaluation of the commitment of women and then the improvement in terms of their participation. And currently, we are working on the airline survey, which also involved the community participatory assessment, just to evaluate and see the impact with factual data to show how women has improved in terms of participating in our response. So for us, these are the tools that we utilize very well, and that has actually given us positive outcome. Yeah.
Great. That's very interesting. Thank you. And I always tell people this as well when they ask, how do we select the tools? I say use it as a menu. Go through it and pick and choose what suits your needs and your context, what fits your needs right now. The tools, they're not supposed to replace a full participation project, and they're not very limiting, as in you can only use one chapter here and one chapter there. You can use them as you like, exactly the way that you were describing it there. That was a very good example, and it's always interesting to hear how they have been used. I also asked the people in this invite to the session if they had any questions coming up to the session. So I received a few questions, but I want to ask you guys that are here first if do you have any questions for me about the toolbox, about the use?
Yeah. So maybe just before that, I just wanted to clear also that while considering the tools, we should also very importantly consider our context and then the cultural differences. For example, it's okay for us to establish the Women Coordination Network because of the level of engagement we have had with the stakeholders, as well as the cultural sensitivity of the different, which is why a female staff is actually facilitating the coordination. So it's important for us to also look at the context very importantly, so that we will not have to, contribute to more harm than trying to improve the coordination system, whereby the leadership, the already structured leadership, feels as if the women are coming to take more decision, are having more power than them. So we try as much as possible to balance these two to ensure that there are no conflict of interest and there are no issues arising from either decision that's coming from women or that from the men. Yeah.
Excellent point. Yeah. We do not want to put anyone at harm by enforcing our ideas on participation. There's a question for you here, Raphael, in the chat from Karam. Since Raphael mentioned ownership, actually, Karam, do you want to ask the question, or would you like me to ask for you?
No worries. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Raphael. I just like to ask about ownership, since you mentioned ownership. So, which tool help you most to really have ownership or to enhance ownership among women or your community, the community that you're working with? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. From the start of the response has never been a permanent solution. So while we're implementing, we also come up with transit ideas whereby when the response is no longer there, how can the community take up this ownership and continue what has been happening? And this is something that, as part of the phase out process, I think there's a tool among the CCT, I can't exactly pick where, that talked about exits, where you plan how the ownership of this decision-making, the coordination. What we do as NRC is to facilitate and support the process. But in terms of decision-making, in terms of taking ownership in participation, for example, let me just cite an example with one of the women member that was engaged through the CLP. Through that CLP, she was able to engage other women in that process. And there's also a contributing saving that contribute to their capital, and then the item they produce contribute to the local market. So it means that automatically now women has taken the ownership, and they are currently running this particular initiative that actually came from them. Because before deciding the community-led initiative, there was problem identification and prioritization, which is also one of the tools in the CCT, where the community sit down, identify needs, concern, and then they prioritize which is more important to them at that particular moment. So the inclusion from the start actually.
Hello? Is it just me that lost Raphael?
Yeah. Yes.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Please. Yes, you're back.
So I don't know, where did you miss me from?
The inclusion from the start.
Yeah, so I think the inclusion from the start is very important to give them that ownership mentality. And the community-led initiative has contributed to that a lot, because this is something that the community do themselves. What the site management do is just to monitor and then observe what is happening. But in terms of ownership, in terms of deciding what to do with the capital, in terms of expanding, in terms of trying to engage more women in that particular activities, is entirely up to the women based on all the capacity that they have received from the NRCHs. I don't know if that have answered your question, but I'm still open. Yes, thanks, Christine. I was referring to the exit checklist. Yeah.
Did you find it? I can show you where it is. So if you go to, it is actually under community centers. So sometimes you need to know where they are. So it's under how to hand over a community center. But as I was saying, these are very easy to edit and contextualize, all the tools. So even though this is specifically about the modality of a community center, it could be about how to hand over any type of project activity. So this is where you can find the exit checklist template and other handover, like participatory handover tools as well. And I wanted to share with you another neat little feature. So if I just go back to the home, the landing page, you can search for tools by keyword. So for example, if I search for coaching, to spell it correctly, I hope you're following my screen. Can you see now what came up when I was searching for coaching? Okay, I get a thumbs up. All these tools, will have mentioned coaching, developing a community engagement strategy using CCT tools, a UDoc project phase, some of the French versions. And then if you want to refine your search, I suppose, you can say coaching guidelines. Sorry, again, I have to spell it correctly for this to work. Guidelines. Here you get the community coaching guidelines, for example, and the CLPs are the community-led projects, process and tools. And if we try with exit, for example, in case you don't know that they are under the community center tab or chapter, you get, see here is the exit checklist template. And also staff training, etc. So if you know that you're looking for a tool on something specific, that can be quite useful to just search for keywords here.
Any other questions?
I have another question. Oh, sorry. If I have to raise my hand. Karam,
well, you're at the same time as Ahmad, so I'll take Ahmad first, and then we'll come back to you, Karam, if that's okay.
I just have like one short question for Raphael regarding stakeholder engagement. To what extent the working actors in Nigeria and the area of intervention and the local authorities were cooperating with the trained community members?
Hello. Sorry, can you please come again with the question?
Yeah, I was asking about the stakeholder engagement level with the local authorities and the working agencies in the areas. To what extent they were cooperating with the community members, trainees, and with you guys as team as well.
Yeah, that is a very good question. Thank you so much. In terms of engagement with the local stakeholders as well as the community members, I think for the Nigerian context, it has been very, very interesting because we work closely with the National Emergency Management Agency, the NEMA, as well as the State Emergency Management Agency. These are two bodies that are closely working with the CCM sector that also co-lead and co-chair the CCM sector coordination. And then we have worked effectively to refer certain cases to even the SEMA, NEMA, as well as the UN agency, such as OCHA. So we have worked closely with the different bodies from the ministry, from the state, and collectively we have closely worked to ensure that the displaced population have good. So how this is linked is at the site level, we have the desk officers sometimes from the state agency, and then at the state level, we have the SEMA. At the local government level, we also have the SEMA representative. So at the federal level, we have the NEMA. So this body work together in coordination to actually see that the displaced population, of course, the government have the primary responsibility for internally displaced people. But what we have done is to ensure that we have a close working relationship with them, in coordinating with them, and also ensuring that they are also has been supportive. One example I will cite about that is the recent flood disaster that happened in Maiduguri, which ravaged over 400,000 individuals displaced as a result of the flooding. So this led to robust coordination with the government agency, the Borno State Agency for Humanitarian Coordination, the OCHA, and a lot of service providers, as well as the partners we work with. So we went into a joint assessment to see the gaps and need. And then from the outcome of that joint assessment, we provided a robust response, even though response are provided individually from different agencies, but the government body, which is the Borno State Agency for Humanitarian Coordination, is actually coordinating the entire response. So every single thing we do, actually, the government is aware, and we are actually engaging very well with them, which is why we're having a smooth operation in terms of trying to see that the people in need, which is our primary focus, get the right support. And then, of course, the supports that are coming is also good quality and also meets to their immediate need while they are still in the displacement site or in the urban out-of-camp areas. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Karam, back to you. Karam, are you there?
I'm so sorry, I just was opening the door for my son, just came from school. I was asking about the CCT tools. Do you have any way that I can find the content in one page so I know the whole?
So glad you asked.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like I planted this question. I will show you now. Here, if you go to about the toolbox and how to use the CCT, and you scroll down, there is a Word document called the CCT Outline and Overview.
and you see it's the updated version with the added tools. I have it here ready, open as the Word document, just to show you. It has the full content description. So it starts with explaining, what is in the toolbox and why they're named the way they are, and then the whole toolbox is explained by chapter. So you see here's, I call the tabs chapters, but so purpose of the chapter and then what is in them, and then each chapter is explained, and then each tool in each chapter is explained down to how long, for example, it will take to deliver this training using the session plan, approximately. And then recommendation for use, who could use them, who to invite, etc. Not just for training tools, but for every single tool in every of the chapters. So it's under how to use the CCT, and it's called the outline. So I hope that's answering your question. Good. Are there any other questions from the participants here? Or will I go to one of the questions asked beforehand? I don't see any further hands. Excuse me. So another question that I received was a version of another very common question. It is about, I work in XYZ sector that is not site management, or I work for XYZ agency, is not NRC. Can I still use the tools? Can I still use the toolbox? Are they relevant for me? Are they accessible for me? The answer to all of these questions is yes. Anyone can use the toolbox and access them. They're free, and like I was saying, there's no copyright. Please download them, change them as much as you like. Yes, they're based on experiences and use from a site management agency, but they're very useful for any sector that want to increase participation in their activities, any agency. I've just as an example, I got a request from Humanitarian Mine Action, who asked if there's any tools for engaging the local community in their work. And although I don't know much about mine clearing and mine action myself, some of the tools that they found useful, they were the social and cultural influence analysis tools that I mentioned at the start, which is part of the first phase of so the assessment phase of the roadmap, is the tools that identify the informal leaders from the different demographic groups among them in the community. And they were using this to identify representatives from the groups that could have specific information about which neighborhoods and buildings that should be prioritized when clearing mines. And this is really important because as the staff from Humanitarian Mine Action was explaining to me, they cannot clear everything at the same time. You have to prioritize areas, and then the community knows better than someone coming from the outside which neighborhoods, which areas to prioritize, and just to know who to ask within the community, which areas to prioritize is important. Whether that is where the children go to play or where they go to harvest their crops, etc. And the community, once the representatives were identified, could explain to them which ones they wanted to prioritize, and then they could work from there. That's just one example. I also recently heard from one colleague who used to work for MSF in Syria, would use the Toolbox, the community-led project tool specifically, when he was working with youth in a Syrian prison. So they have many uses. It could be used in WASH, in food security, in health. It's not about which sector or agency you're working in. It's more about where you are in the process. And if you already have gone through the first step, then you should move to step 2, which is supporting the community groups and representatives, and identifying how best you can support them. And of course, then once you've done step 2, you go to step 3. I see there's some comments in the chat. Tom, do you want to speak up?
Okay, it's a comment, not a question, but what I've really found most useful almost with CCT is how when you're super busy, you've got 12 million things going on all at the same time, it's quite hard to devote, I mean, I'm slightly off topic, but I found it more useful than anything for training teams and getting teams to think about challenges and problems, and then sort of sliding from that into, okay, how can we use this? And when you've got a million things going on, you don't have the time to make really good training materials you would like, etc., that sort of thing. The CCT is just such a great resource for dipping in and out of in tiny little chunks, which makes it accessible and easy. And I like that very much. And I've done things, and I've worked with teams who have done things that we wouldn't have been able to do without it, purely because no one had the time to actually sit down and reinvent everything again and again for the different contexts. So lots of thumbs up for CCT. Love it very much. Super useful. And thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad you spoke up. I just also want to note that Tom does not work or has not worked for NRC. So different agency altogether. Ahmad is asking for peace building as well. Absolutely. Peace building, development work. It doesn't have to be humanitarian. Participation tools are relevant in all these stages and sectors. And Karam is asking, so can we tailor the tools to fit with the context and the theme, or do we need to inform you about any changes? No need to inform you about anything. Always happy to hear about how they've been used, but that's from a very selfish perspective. I just want to use this as examples for these types of presentations. But no, you don't need to. You can use them as you like without asking any permission or reporting on anything. Just download it and make it yours, or use the online versions. I had other questions prepared as well, but are there any questions for the last 4 minutes from the people here? Another question that I received beforehand was about whether there are any tools for remote use when we cannot access the displaced, so the project participants. How can you try and understand their priorities as well as their needs and their capacities? There are tools for this as well. They're called user-centered tools. That's the chapter tab. They're basically people-centered tools. I think they're mostly called in the humanitarian sector. But when we started contextualizing these for the toolbox, we found them from the private sector, and they're called user-centered tools there because they're basically tools for making sure, for businesses to make sure that a product is relevant for the user. You know, the success of the product, whether it's like a train or a shoe or a jumper, unless it meets the needs and the wants of the user, there's no success, right? It's not going to sell. So we contextualize these types of tools, as have many others, for the humanitarian sector. You can find them under user-centered tools. You can also search for remote, for example, in the toolbox, and you find them. There's guidance on how to use them. I just want to emphasize that they should always be used with preferably someone from the displaced population or some staff that have worked directly with the population that you are discussing in these tools. That was just a rushed answer to a question I had received previously. The last thing that I want to say from my side is, where are my notes? That there's another document that can be very useful for you that is like a FAQ, like a frequently asked question document. That's the guidance for using the CCT. It includes many of these questions that I have talked about today, because they are frequently asked, and they explain a bit more eloquently, because it's in writing, what I've said today, and has hyperlinks to the relevant tools, etc. You can find it under the tab How to Use the CCT. And also just email me. You can email me anytime with any questions, and I'm always happy to set aside some time to go through the needs for these types of tools for your context. Hi, Mohammed. Oh, nice to see you here. 1 year since my degree. Yeah, sorry, I'm being wrapped up in the chat now. Are there any other questions before we close? Because now it's been 1 hour on the dot. I don't see any questions. But yeah, please write to me. I can put my email in the chat here for anyone who doesn't have it at this point. It's also, you can find it on the CCT website. But it is a very difficult last name, so I'll write it here in the chat again. And thank you very much, Raphael, for helping me out today with some excellent examples and explanations. And thanks to everyone else for joining. I hope that you will find it easier to use the CCT now. And yes, Raphael, do you want to say something? You're muted.
Yes, please. Thank you. So I wanted to ask specifically, because I noticed we have a lot of tools on the CCT. However, in terms of tools for evaluation, I can only see the participatory assessment survey and just 2. So in terms of the robust work we do, especially during the outcome indicator targets achievement. So I think it would be good to have tools that we can easily utilize, for example, to actually assess the impact of all the other activities we're doing. Specifically now we only have for the participatory method. I don't know if we can have more on other activities, particularly site improvement activity, where we can be able to measure the outcome of the activity and not just specific to target, because mostly site improvement is all about materials and co, but the impact in terms of individuals within the community, I think a tool like that will go a long way to actually track and ensure that we're making huge contribution to the wider displacement movement. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, it's true, we don't have that many tools on M&E, but one tool that I always like to recommend to people is one of the few M&E tools that we have is the participatory community feedback tool, the one that looks like a spider web. Have you seen this? And the reason why I like to recommend it is because it can be used for any project or any activity, so it's very flexible like that. But most importantly, it allows the project participants to be the one to decide what is impact, what do they want to see coming from this project, and how do we measure impact. And it's often very different from what we, the donors, head office, use for their outcome indicators. So yeah, we don't have any tools for measuring, set outcome indicators, but I think it's a very useful tool for allowing actual input from the project participants in identifying these, and also for them to monitor how successfully we are reaching these indicators. There's also some guidance in that chapter on participatory M&E. But when you, I'll make a note of it. Like you're saying, the impact on individuals. We don't have any tool for this. This is right. So yeah, we can talk about that more and see if we have a chance to include something on this. Yeah. Anything else from anyone? Sorry, I'm keeping you. If not, thanks very much to everyone for joining today, and I hope that you will have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Super interesting.